Welcome to the Jet Set Hers podcast. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Jamie. We discuss travel, adventure, and everyday life. Listen with us and let's go somewhere.
Hi.
Hey, Jenny, what's up?
Not much. We have a special guest today. Hi, Cris.
Hi, I'm excited to be here. Thank you, ladies.
Yeah, this is our first official guest. Like, it's not friend or family. It's someone that's also in the podcasting world. So we're excited to have you.
Yes, thank you so much. I am so excited to talk about travel. I am such a travel addict. Like, COVID is killing me. So I'm just excited to talk about where you've been, where I've been, anything.
Yep, same. That's why we're here. So, Jamie, what you drinking?
Today, I actually have a weird sounding beer. It's from Lagunitas. The name caught me. It says a Citra hopped mega IPA of intergalactic proportions. So I'm like, okay, this is a little weird sounding, but it's definitely just a strong IPA. A little fruity, pretty easy to go down.
I like the name.
I like the description. Like, that's just great. It made me think of, what's that movie? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's what movie I was thinking of.
I love that movie. I read those books too. It's a good series.
Yeah, that beer sounds like it's a beer you should be drinking with that movie.
What are you drinking, Cris?
So, like, as I logged on to meet y'all, I realized that it said beer, and I made a cup of tea. But it's only because my son was out of town for the last 4 days. So I've drank entirely too much wine in the last 4 days. And I was like, I need something a little healthy for me. Yeah. So I'm just drinking hot tea today, but I love some wine. So we have to talk about wine or something instead.
Yeah. Hey, I like hot tea too.
Jenny, what are you drinking?
I'm really excited to tell you guys what I'm drinking today because it's not an IPA like normal. So we went to a brewery this Saturday in Idaho Springs, Colorado, which is in the mountains, probably about 45 minutes or so outside of Denver. And we got a flight, and of course I tried their IPAs, their hazy, everything, all very good. But I tried one of their new pumpkin beers because I love pumpkin beers. And this one was absolutely delicious. It came with this like cinnamon sugar rim. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to buy a 6-pack. Well, they actually give you the cinnamon sugar rim to create it at home. So you use vanilla extract to put it on so it stays sweet. And it's just such a delicious fall beer. And the brewery was super cute too. It's called the Tommyknocker Brewery. So I was looking at their website earlier, and I just wanted to read you guys this little description of where the name Tommyknockers came from.
Can I say something before you tell us the story?
Yeah.
That beer sounds so good, especially with the rim. Like, what? Oh my God, I'm jealous.
It's so I think I want to try that with some other drinks, not even beer. Like, that just sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure you could turn that into like a little holiday. Any teas or coffees too. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was totally thinking wine.
So this is actually, it's called the Imperial Pumpkin Ale. So that's what their name of it is. But so the legend of the Tommyknockers comes, it says, when the Cornish miners came from the tin mines in Cornwall to work in the gold fields of Colorado in the 1860s, they brought with them elves, and they were called Tommyknockers. They lived in the mines. They were responsible for mischief, such as candles blowing out, eating lunches, stealing tools. But it said that if the miners were kind and left food for them, they were rewarded by finding rich veins of gold, or even being warned of impending danger. So I just thought that was really cute.
I love the story behind it.
Yeah. And like their logo is this really cute little elf Tommyknocker. So
that's so cool.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I'm drinking. It's delicious.
That's awesome.
So yeah, Cris, just tell us about yourself.
So I am a self-proclaimed travel addict, I would say. I mean, I have my own podcast, I have my own business, but what I'm so excited to talk to you ladies today about is travel, because my son always says that I need a 12-step program for my travel addiction. I mean, we've just been everywhere, but the thing that's really cool, so I was a VA, started my own creative agency. So now my husband and my son both work for me. So we're all location independent. And I have this, not only am I a travel addict, but I'm also a bargain hunter. So like the trips we take are ridiculously inexpensive. And it was funny because I was thinking about what we'd talk about today. And our first trip, we took our son, he's 19 now, but we took him to Europe the summer between 8th grade and 9th grade for the first time. And we spent like $12,000 on that trip. Like it was
Wow.
ridiculous what we spent on it because just the airfare alone was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then like last year, my husband and I went to different parts of Europe, but we were gone for 20 days and it cost like $3,000 for everything. So I've gotten a lot better at travel planning.
Yeah.
And that's what I get so excited about is telling everybody how cheap my travels are. So
Yeah, that's impressive.
I know. I'm telling you, like, you know, you can look at a woman and say, that's a really pretty dress, and she'll say thank you. But if she got it on sale or got a good deal on it, she's like, oh my gosh, it was like $3. Isn't it great?
Yes. So true.
And so that's me at travel.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm all about the deals. And sometimes I just plan trips based on where I can find cheap tickets. Yeah, absolutely. My husband and I, in 2019, we spent 50 days abroad because I just kept finding really good deals. And of course, now we find places that we keep saying we want to go new places, and there's certain places that kind of grab our heart and we end up back every time. But it's definitely fun. So I've been to, just to name a few, and then y'all pick where you want to talk about. So our first trip we took my son was to London, Germany, and Sweden. The second trip we took him for 2 weeks to Egypt, and we did a 4-day cruise down the Nile.
I'm so jealous.
Oh my gosh, that was like, it was
I already
fabulous.
know which one I'm going to vote to talk about.
Right. We've also been, my husband and I went to India for like 7 days with some friends. We've also been to, another trip was Portugal, Norway, and Sweden. You'll hear me say Sweden all the time because let me just tell you where my travel addiction started is I was an exchange student in high school. Mm-hmm. And so I went to Sweden in high school and I didn't go back for 20 years just because college, marriage, baby, all that kind of stuff. And so where I live in High Point, I'm in High Point, North Carolina, which is the heart of furniture industry. And so in our town, Furniture Market comes to town for 10 days twice a year. And a lot of people rent their houses out to visitors. And then, they leave town because you really don't want to be in town when Furniture Market comes to town. So we started renting our house out, and we rented our house out for 10 days. And if we do it twice a year, we basically make 7 months worth of our mortgage. And so a lot of people use that to pay their mortgage or to be responsible and put it away for their kids' college. Nope, I use it for travel. So I definitely kind of have this little kiddie fund that pays for my travel now.
And you do that twice a year?
Yes.
See, that's genius. Because then you just plan your trips over that time.
Well, and so my parents also have a beach condo. So my parents live the next city over, but they're too far away to rent. So my parents go to their beach house for a month. We go to my parents' house, and then we're still in town because our son was still in school. So this is the first year he won't be in school that we're like, oh, but so that's how we fund it. And that's why we go to all these crazy places that nobody ever thinks to go, is because we're just like, hey, where is somewhere nobody else has gone? Like, I want to go somewhere we haven't seen pictures. But we do always end up back in Sweden because the people that I lived with are still there. And so I like to go visit them. And there's some really awesome places in Sweden, but you'll hear every trip somehow ends up in Sweden.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I want to go to Sweden.
Wow. I want to hear all about all of them, but I know I can't do that
today. At least a
day.
Today. Well, I know I definitely want to hear about Egypt because, as I've said on here before, that's my number one bucket list destination. So,
is it?
Yes.
That's awesome. So my profession is I'm a graphic designer. Mm-hmm. And so I've been in sales and marketing for 20 plus years. And I went back to graphic design school a couple years ago. Well, I graduated in 2017. So it was 4 years before that. And one of the first classes I had to take was art history. So I took kind of the ancient art history, and my term paper for that class was the ancient burial techniques of the pyramids versus the Valley of the Kings. And at that point, so we're talking like 2012, 2013, the revolution was new. Like it was so volatile over there that I remember like my textbook was the size of an encyclopedia. And I'm reading through it and I'm looking at all these pictures and it's just so gorgeous. And I said to my husband, I'm like, can we go? And he's like, no.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what the climate is there? He's like, it's not safe. And we took him in 2017. So we're on Facebook when it's like 2 weeks before Christmas. One of our friends is an older retired gentleman and he posts pictures that he had just come back from taking a Viking cruise through Egypt. And my husband and I are laying in bed. It's a Saturday morning. I guess we hit these pictures at the same moment. And I'm like, Ziggy just came back from Egypt. And Matthew says, okay, well, if Ziggy went, we should be able to go. I'm not kidding. Within like 2 weeks, we had tickets. We had a tour planned. We gave our son like a book about ancient Egypt for Christmas with a letter that said, in 10 weeks, you're spending spring break there.
That's
amazing. So we took him for 2 weeks, and his school, because we were going to Egypt, he was going to miss a week of class. But as long as he did a journal entry every day about what he'd seen, they counted him as present. Because really, did I care about his absence if he was actually in Egypt?
Yeah.
Sure. That's still fantastic of the school for being like team players,
It's really cool the school did that because I feel like you learn way more going and seeing another country than you do sitting in a class for a week. So I think that's really cool. They gave him credit for that.
Well, and one of the things I loved about it is because I'm mom. So I'm always like, well, tell me what you thought about it. Let's write about it. You're going to want to know this stuff later.
Yeah.
And so he actually had to write about it. So we had a journal, and every night all three of us took turns and wrote in it. So we have this really fun journal that all three of us kind of documented and saw different things of the trip. I don't know if we'll ever read it or look at it, but it was a lot of fun.
Well, that's cool too, because like I'm sure you each had a different perspective. He probably saw things that were cool, and then you guys probably saw more of the history, and that's cool.
Yeah, it was really great. And so we started out in Cairo and saw the pyramids. And I'll tell you that they actually kind of ended up being the least exciting part of the whole trip. We got to ride camels in the desert. And so they took us around the backside of the pyramids where you're like straight up just deserts, because the pyramids actually back up to Cairo, to the city. It's insane. And you're just on the other side and it's silent and you just hear the wind blowing and the sand, and you're riding camels through the desert, and you can't help but think, thousands of years ago when nobody knew the pyramids were there and they were literally riding a camel through the desert with no idea where they're going. And here's these pyramids. Like, how impressive and life-changing was that for people?
Yeah.
It was just amazing.
I might not look it, but I'm like in shock because Egypt has always been my number one. My parents were always like, oh, you can't go there, it's not safe. But seeing travel groups that I'm in and stuff, and women go solo all the time. It's better if you go in a group, like a travel group or something with other people, but it's possible. It's doable.
Well, I love that you brought up safety because, just to speak on that for a second. So when we left, lots of friends were like, you're going to Egypt? Like, that's insane. Why would you do that? It's not safe. And of all my travels, I've never felt more safe than I did in Egypt. Now, we had a tour guide. So we went with a company. It's called Ramesside. And we had a private driver and a private tour guide. And it wasn't that expensive. And they treated us amazingly. So in Egypt, I think, and I'm going to get the statistics wrong, so don't hold me to it, but, like 80% of their industry is tourism.
Yeah.
And it was down drastically. So people were so appreciative that we were there. And, it was funny. It wasn't an expensive trip. So with all of our, like, not including our airfare to get to Egypt, but our hotel, all of our food, our personal guide, our personal driver, we flew within Egypt twice. We did a 4-day cruise. It was like $1,400 a person for everything.
Wow.
Yeah. And we went,
wow.
And we were staying in like 5-star hotels.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was just amazing. Now the cruise ships are a riverboat and they weren't 5-star, but it didn't matter. Like I didn't
I wouldn't
go
care at that
expecting
point.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was like $13.50 a person or something. So it was so
Still, that's
reasonable.
incredible.
Yeah, for 12 days. And the food was unreal. Buffets everywhere. Like it was just amazing. So we had this one guy. He was our guide for the when we went down the Nile. And so basically what he does is he lives on one end of the island, one end of the Nile. He travels down, spends a night, comes back. So that's all he does is goes back and forth. He was the best guide. Like, and I'm a mom, so he figured out quick. Keep the kid happy, they're happy. So Kevin got to drive the tram through the Valley of the Kings. He got to drive the buggy on a horse-drawn carriage through one of these little towns. Like Kevin got to do everything that was cool. When we were leaving, we had $60 left in cash. That's all like the American money we still had. And so we tipped him that because we thought he deserved way more than that. But that was all we still had as far as American money. And they really love American money there. So we figured out later that the $60 we tipped him was almost 2.5 weeks worth of pay for him. And it was so simple to us. Like we thought he deserved way more. And they were
crazy.
just fabulous. So yeah, so we were treated like they just loved us and they treated us so safely and took such great care of us. And as I said, I remember my friends being like, why are you doing that? So the next summer, my son's best friend was in France when that bombing happened, or was it? So when you look at the safety of a place, yeah, obviously you don't want to go into the middle of just war-torn places, but it can happen in France. It can happen in Egypt. It can happen anywhere. And are you going to live so afraid that you don't experience? I think it's really when you travel, it's about being aware and kind of watching where you're going and what you're doing.
Yeah.
And just not being cloud in the heads or head in the sky.
It's not safe here. I mean, look at the Vegas shooting. They were at a country concert. So it's like whenever people are like, other countries aren't safe, I'm like, neither is ours right now. Especially right now. We have our own internal war going on. So it's not going to keep me from going. Now, I might not go somewhere super against women by myself as a woman. But that's when you just do a little research and prepare a little bit.
Absolutely. And, I know we were going to talk about Egypt, but so we were in India, and as I mentioned to you guys off camera, I'm a yoga teacher training, and I love yoga, and I was so excited to go to India. And we were in the middle of this festival that happens, I think, every 11 or 12 years. And we were on a bus, and I'm not kidding. You know how those movies where they're like crammed on a bus and they're hanging on the train and they're hanging off the top? Like that stuff's real.
Yeah.
We pulled up to a bus stop and we're crammed together, and people off the bus were yelling at the people on the bus to move back. Like I couldn't understand them because of the language, but I'm pretty sure that's what they were yelling, because all the people on the bus were then like, ah, ah, ah. So we were there, and I don't think it's that we as Americans are so appreciated, but it's just when people see somebody of a different culture. In the US, we're such a melting pot that you don't know when somebody's new or when they were just visiting, so you can't strike up those conversations. But in India, they knew I wasn't from India. And there were these two girls, and I think they were 12 on the bus, and they were so giddy to see my husband and I. And I kind of smiled at them and waved, and the little girl started talking, and her dad was standing, and he kind of kept like saying something to her and nudging her and then pointing at us. So he was telling her what to say to us, but it was super cute because she was so excited to speak English.
Aww.
And we just spent like 10 minutes on this bus ride, and I showed her pictures of my son, and she showed me pictures of where she lived. And so it was just this really neat exchange of, this is my culture, this is your culture. And that's what I love about travel so much, is just seeing such a different culture.
Well, I mean, it just like opens your views, and it just makes you realize you're such a small part of this gigantic world. And I think it's beautiful. Yeah.
That just is absolutely amazing. That's what I love about travel too, is seeing how other people, live and seeing how other people do stuff. So that's great.
And it's neat to really get to experience it and feel it. When we were in Egypt, we'll take it back there. So at the end of our Nile cruise, our tour guide's name was Ahmed, and the cruise ended in his hometown. So we were still on the boat for a night, just spending the night on the boat. But then we didn't have dinner there or something. I don't remember the reason why we didn't eat on the boat, but we wanted to go to the markets and kind of see what the town was like. And so we've been with him for 3.5 days at this point, and he looks at us, and we're there with 2 other friends. So there were 5 of us. And he looks at us and says, "Do you trust me?" And we're like, "Yeah, should we not?" He said, "No, just trust me. If you really want to see my town, I'll show you my town." And we're like, we are game. Like, we don't want to do the tourist things. We want to see your town. So he took us to this restaurant. We're looking at the menu. And finally, one of us just says, "Why don't you just order for all of us?" So we end up with this huge spread. We all eat family style. We were with him for 3 or 4 hours that night. And we were the only non-natives there. And that what was so great about it is because we were really just living their culture. We were at their market. We were at their local restaurants. It wasn't doing the touristy thing where you get all the same tourist souvenirs from the next 5 booths. And that's what travel's really cool about, is when you can connect with somebody who's a native, who's a local, who wants to show you their culture.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, and you're actually getting to really see what that country is like, and you're not just doing the touristy stuff, because honestly, the touristy stuff is the same in every country for the most part.
It's all from China.
I mean, it might be a bad background, a different background, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I have to hear more about Egypt.
It was so much fun. So my son got to hold a snake while a snake charmer, did his charming.
God.
You have to see the picture. It's hysterical. I'm so sorry this is a podcast because I just want to pull up lots and lots of pictures and show you guys stuff.
Well, we'll definitely have you send us some for the Instagram.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I think one of my most surreal moments, so we did the camel ride around the pyramids. We did a hot air balloon ride over the Valley of the Kings, which was a little lackluster, but I think it was our hot air balloon company. So we won't talk about that. But then we also, just the things we did was so amazing. And for me, going to the Valley of the Kings, because that's what I had really done my paper about when I was still in school. And I wrote something about Queen Hatshepsut's reign and her burial and her temple. And to see that, that was the moment that I was like, holy crud, I'm here. Yeah. I'm standing right here in the middle of my art history book and looking at it. And it was amazing. And then we also, I'm giving you all the highlights. So stop me if there's the point that you're like, "Ooh, I want to hear more about that one."
Okay. Well, I want to hear everything, but yes.
Yeah.
Right.
12 days I'm trying to cram in for you. So we also went to Abu Simbel, which is the big temple burial that was on the Nile that they had to move so it didn't get buried when they built the dam. So I'm from North Carolina, and I think of back in the day when they moved Cape Hatteras Lighthouse because it was too close to the ocean, and it was like a months and months ordeal. And so to see Abu Simbel and how they had to move it all and rebuild it was amazing. And we were still with Ahmed, our tour guide. And so this was a 3-hour trip outside of where we had been. And so it was funny, talking about safety. So we had a new driver because when we got off the boat and at the Nile, when we were on the Nile trip, we had a new driver each day because we're a couple of hours away. So we had a new driver, and there was a guy in the van with us. And I just thought that was weird. Like maybe his friend was hanging out with him for the day or something. Well, we found out later that he was actually a security guard to be with us because we were going through the desert for 3 hours. And it was funny because we were, we just thought this guy was hanging out. I had no idea he was packing.
Yeah.
Damn.
So we get to Abu Simbel, and you have to remember, we're with a 14-year-old, another friend who's an adult, but he's not a morning person. And so our tour guide had figured us out by this point. And so we were supposed to get up at 5 a.m. to make this drive because of how long of the drive it was. And he said that, he didn't want to make us upset and that he knew that it would be better if he just let us sleep that morning because we had been going. And I think we're on day like 8 or 9 at this point.
Yeah.
And so he lets us sleep till like 9 and we were thrilled. What we didn't know is, again, he knew what he was doing because he's this professional. We get to Abu Simbel, and as we're coming through the desert, all these huge buses, like tourist buses, are going the opposite direction from us. And we're in this little like van. It's not even a church van. It's just a van with 3 rows of seatings. And so we get to Abu Simbel, and there was nobody there, like not a single soul that didn't work there. So we got to walk around Abu Simbel by ourselves for like an hour before the next group of tours came. And I'll have to send you some pictures of that one because it was so amazing to walk through it and to walk under these huge carvings that are, I don't even know how many stories tall, but it was just amazing because when I send you the pictures, you'll be like, oh, Abu Simbel, because it's so iconic.
That's one thing I started following during COVID is like some of the museums in Egypt, and they post like these 360 view photos. And every day I'm like, ooh, what's this one? Like, let's look at it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, it's just everywhere you go is a museum. It's just one of the things I loved. And I think of this with Abu Simbel. When you're walking in, there's 2 statues on each side. And if you're facing the temple, the statue on the right, the one that you walk by, it says like Smith 1774 or something. Like an explorer carved his name on the side of it. Like we have graffiti in Detroit now. Like it was hysterical.
Oh.
And you see this graffiti places and it's just carved into the sandstone. And it's a name and a year. And you're like, really? We were doing graffiti in the 1700s. Like that's hysterical.
It's just their version. It's not spray paint.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It cracked me up. But I mean, and I've got pictures of them places where it's just like, you have to laugh that there's this graffiti carved into the side of Abu Simbel.
But what's crazy is that's also historic now because it was in the 1700s. Like that was a long time ago.
Right. It's not graffiti anymore. It's historic. It's really cool.
Right.
Now it isn't nice if someone comes and writes, 2020 next to it or something, but
Joe loves Junie or something like that. Yeah, it's super fun.
With the heart.
Right. But it's crazy how you see that kind of stuff is just on the side of things. Abu Simbel was amazing because it was just us by ourselves.
That is really cool. You must have timed that like perfectly because you said there were more buses coming.
Yeah, as we were leaving, I mean, I think it's because Ahmed knew what he was doing. Like he knew how to get us there at the right time so that there was nobody there, that we didn't have to interact with everybody. Where he told us it was because he was letting us sleep, but he didn't want to deal with the throngs of people
crowds.
either. So, and even there was a little market, like a sandwich shop, that had ice cream or something at the front, kind of before you go in. And the guy was like, "Oh, you guys made perfect timing. We just had 4 buses leave." And everybody speaks English there. So it's amazing that you can talk to anybody there.
Yeah. I know that's one thing I don't like about America is that we only speak one language and we expect everyone else to know it. And I'm just like, most countries speak like 3 to 5. The fact that we're like struggling on one, we can't even speak it properly. So
absolutely. And it's hard to travel because I have had that feeling myself of like, you walk into a place and you say, "Do you speak English?" And if they say no, you're like, crud, what do I do?
Yeah.
Because we do kind of expect them to speak English to us. And that's a little harder.
Although I've experienced that too, where people are excited to practice English. Like I had that in like Italy. They were like, all right, yeah, let's go. Granted, I feel like Italy is definitely very English friendly.
I have never been to Italy. What was your favorite place you've ever been to?
I loved Rome, which is really funny because a lot of people say that when they went to Rome, it was like graffitied and trashy and like just not taken care of. But that's not the Rome I saw. The Rome I saw was like taken care of. Everyone was so nice.
That's on my next 2 list is Italy, Rome, the Parthenon, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Jamie, where's your favorite place?
I think probably Hawaii or New Mexico is my favorite place right now. I've never done an international trip. I've just only been to Canada.
Well, that's technically international.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But just, I guess, because it's so close to Michigan, it was easy for us to go as a
Yeah.
kid. So close to Detroit. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see it from Detroit.
Yep.
Well, it still needs, you have to cross through border control, so it still counts.
Yeah, I guess you're definitely right about that.
Like, what was your favorite part about your Egypt trip?
Oh, that is a really hard question because it was such a different trip from each section. Like when we were in Cairo and we saw the pyramids, and then we went to the Egypt Museum, which in 2014, they were, air quotes, opening the new one any day now. And I think it's just opening. Like I can't really understand because I follow them on Instagram and they're at least moving exhibits in. So the museum used to be, the new one's going to be gorgeous. I've seen pictures of it. It's absolutely fabulous. But the old one was just this big concrete building. And it was fabulous because it was as old as some of the artifacts.
Yeah.
So we got to see like King Tut, and we got to go into, and this shows my age, which I've already told, but I remember when I was in like middle school with my church group, we went to see Ramesside as he was traveling around the like country. And so we actually got to see part of him there. And it was just really cool to see all this stuff, like actual mummies and actual, like all of King Tut's burial stuff was there. Now, King Tut himself is still in his tomb, and we got to see that when we were in the Valley of the Kings.
How
But
was
just to
that?
see, oh, it was amazing. Like the Valley of the Kings, again, we'll be like, well, that was my favorite part. But then there was that other part that was my favorite
everything.
part.
So,
So,
can you actually go down into most of the tombs? Like, do they have it where you can like walk on the boardwalks or whatever so you don't disturb it?
yeah, so they actually, you go in the way that they took the mummies in. And so depending on your ticket, and this is how it was in 2017, excuse me, we had a 4-pass ticket. So we could go into 4 different tombs. And I think because they kind of rotate which tombs are open so that none of them get too much wear and tear. And so I think they had like 7 or 8 tombs open that day. And so our guide picked the 4 for us to go into because he picked the ones that we would be able to see the most and that were the most ornate or most interesting or most famous. And so I can't remember all of the ones we went to, but I know we saw King Tut. And I mean, it was just the paintings, the hieroglyphics, the detail of the area, of the places, of all the different temples we went to was amazing because you'd go into one temple and you could see the carvings of things, but there was no paint left.
Yeah.
And then you'd hit the backside of it, or there'd be a corner way up where the paint was still there because it hadn't gotten damaged or it hadn't gotten faded through sun. So the Valley of the Kings was amazing. And King Tut was pristine, his whole temple. I was on a Zoom call the other day with somebody, and you know how you can do the fake Zoom backgrounds where it looks like you're on a beach or something. Well, her background was King Tut's tomb.
Yeah.
And somebody was like, that's a gorgeous room you're in. Where are you? And I'm like, no. That's not real.
Yeah.
So
They thought
that
she
was really
in a
neat.
pretty room.
Yeah, that was really neat that we could go. I want to say that we saw King Tut, Ramesside, and I'm sorry, I don't remember which other ones we saw. I feel horrible that I can't tell you.
That's cool though. I've always wondered because I know a lot of places like don't want people in because like restoration purposes, but if I go, I want to be able to at least see some of these, completely.
Make it worth it.
What would you say was your least favorite part of the trip?
The travel there and back.
The plane ride.
Yeah, well, it was funny because when we left North Carolina, we got delayed. So then we missed our flight in DC. We ended up in Newark. Our friends were coming from somewhere else in North Carolina. They were supposed to meet us. All of our flights got canceled. So we never met up. We ended up in Italy. They ended up somewhere else. And it was really comical because I think they came through Germany and we came through Italy. And we ended up landing within like 20 minutes of each other. We literally bumped into each other in customs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was really funny. But then our travel home, and this always happens to us at some point or another, is our travel home. We flew into Newark. We were on the plane. We were the last flight out for the day, but it was like 5:00, but they had canceled all the flights for the next 3 days because of a storm coming in, and they pulled us off the plane. And we ended up having to drive like 14 hours home.
Oh
So I
my
can't say
God.
anything bad about Egypt, but I can say a whole lot of bad stuff about flying.
Well, that's good to know. There's nothing bad that happened
Yeah,
in
and
Egypt.
one of the things, and it goes back to us talking about culture, like I love going to foreign places and going and finding churches and mosque and just either sitting outside and watching people. One of my favorite things is the call to prayer just outside of a mosque, because there's so much energy and you hear it ringing through the air and you see all the people kind of coming in and there's this reverence. And I just love that part of travel, is experiencing other people's faith
Hmm.
and watching how strongly they believe in it. And I think that's so beautiful. And that was another part that I really loved about Egypt, is how strong their faith was. And it was so funny. So we were in Alexandria, and there was a particular church that our tour guide wanted us to see. And Alexandria is a lot different than any of Egypt. It's more like a European city. It's very modern. And so that was probably my least favorite, just because it was our last day and we felt like we got pulled out of the culture because we were just walking around. And so the church is there. We walk in and we realize that our guide brought us into the church and during the middle of a funeral. And we were just like, oh my gosh, like this is a funeral.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, hey, come on in. And we're like, no. And we just kind of hovered in the back because we felt so incredibly awkward. And so the people were great. They were nice. It was a beautiful church. It looked more like a European church than a temple, obviously. So I guess it was 2 or 3 weeks after we got back, that church was bombed. And where the car bomb was set off was right where we were standing waiting to go in.
Oh my God.
And
Wow.
I mean, nobody was hurt, but it was just a car bomb, just a car bomb. But it was an attack because I think it was a Christian church. And one of the things that I just remember was like my ache for them,
Yeah.
just how much it made me sad that this church was under attack. And it was such a beautiful place and they were so welcoming and so warm. And it just made me sad for the Egyptian people that they had that happen. And
Yeah.
it
That
really
hate.
was sad.
That's intense.
Yeah, especially when the picture showed and my husband was like, recognize this? And it was the gate that we'd been standing at for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. And not even that long after you guys had left.
Right. So while we talk about safety,
Yeah.
but it was an amazing, and one of the other things, like I can keep telling you my favorite things. So after one of our trips, our guide was like, hey, what do you guys want to do? And we're like, we want to try some sugarcane juice. So he takes us to this place. I guess it's their version of a coffee shop, but it's just a hole in the wall. And the 5 of us are sitting on the curb in Cairo. Seats on a curb. 2 or 3 other men come up and we end up sitting there for an hour and a half playing backgammon with 3 Egyptian men and drinking sugarcane juice. Like it was so amazing.
Yeah,
And
that's so cute.
yeah, here's my 14-year-old who's just like, this is some serious cool stuff, Mom.
Yeah. That's
Cool
so good for
things.
him. Yeah, for him to see that the different culture. I love it so much.
Yeah, he still talks about Egypt and how much it really was his favorite place we've ever been.
Yeah, and that's great parenting on your guys' part.
Thanks.
Yeah. It's going to shape him better, I think, overall, just to see different culture. So,
Yeah, and I love just traveling with him. He's a good sport. As long as I keep him fed every 2 hours and soda in him. So he has sugar, which
Yeah.
is not stuff I do at home. So he likes to travel.
just stays really on a sugar high the whole time.
Pretty much.
Well, and the cool thing about that is trying sodas in different countries, it always tastes different. So he was probably trying all kinds of different stuff.
That's funny because that's totally what we do. And he brings bottles back from where we've been that have like the different writing or different languages on them or something like that.
That's so cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
So give us a really quick overview of your trip, because I know you did the Nile River tour, but you also stayed in some resorts. Like, just give us like a quick overview of that part.
Yeah, so we spent 3 days in Cairo. And so when we were in resorts, it was just, businessman travel hotels, but they were really nice. And so we started out in Cairo for 3 days. Then we did the Nile. We came back to Cairo. We spent a couple of days here and there. We came back to the same hotel in Cairo before we left and got to celebrate some Egyptian people's birthday with them because we all had birthday cake together. It was great. So I can't remember all of the places we went, but I know we were in Luxor. We drank champagne on the Nile at sunset. Like, it was gorgeous.
That sounds perfect.
And I will tell you, because I do love wine so much and you guys like your beer, it's not that great in Egypt. It's cheap, but it's not that good.
The wine.
Yes.
What was like the most common like alcohol drinks?
Well, because they're Muslim, they only have alcohol really for the tourists.
Yeah.
So we had the wine we drank was called obelisk, which is, the big obelisk that they have. And that was on the front cover. It was a little bit better than Boone's Farm, but not much.
Okay. Although I can get down on some cheap wine, so it's fine.
Yeah, well, I'm at the point in my life where I like decent wine.
Right. I'm still on that cheap side, so I got to go soon before my taste change.
Yeah, so I don't even need good wine. I just want decent wine.
Right. So, like the Nile tour, you stayed on the boat. Like, you slept on the boat, right?
Yes, and I'm going to send you a picture of the boat because what was so great on the boat is so they basically have these river boats, and they're 4 or 5 stories tall, and they're kind of wide. And we think of like the Love Boat where you've got these huge ships and they've got gangplanks that you walk on and you go up the gangplank and you're on your boat. That's not what they do in Egypt. So there's 12 boats and they are all floating down the river together. And whichever first 3 boats land are the first ones in. And then the next 3 boats are these in. And then the next 3 boats. So they stack them like cars in a parking lot. So there's no gangplank. You walk into the first boat. You walk through their lobby. The next boat is like 4 or 5 inches apart. And you've got this little ledge. And the doors don't line up to each other. So you kind of have to shimmy along the ledge and then jump into the next boat.
Yeah.
And you walk through their lobby and you hope that you were not the last boat in because then you've got to like shimmy through 4 boats. And what I love about it is when you get off the boat, they give you these, like, the only way to describe them are bar coasters. And they look like bar coasters because they're wet, they've been bent, they're cracked, they're whatever. And they have, so they have 40 people on the boat that day. They pass out 40 bar coasters. And when it's time to leave, if they only have 38 coasters, they don't leave until they have all 40 coasters. So they don't actually like keep track of who's not there. They just count how many coasters. Yeah. So they don't actually know who's gone or who's missing, but they just count their bar coasters to know when they can leave.
That's so
That's
funny.
really funny. Yeah.
What bar coasters?
Yeah, I mean, that's totally what they look like. But I mean, it was such an experience. It was such a neat experience to travel that way. And you have these big decks and you're just cruising down the Nile. So you take off at night, a little before sunset. So you're cruising down, watching the sunset. You cruise for a little while and they're not really going that far. You're maybe only cruising like 3 or 4 hours a day because they land at night. You're sleeping there at night. And then in the morning you get off. And then you get back on at like 4 o'clock. So you're off by 4:30. And we actually went through a couple locks. So they actually had to do the actual raise your boat and everything like that. So you're on the boat for dinner and breakfast. And then you're cruising through dinner. But I mean, it was some of the most gorgeous sunsets that I've ever seen is on those.
That was my question, was how are the sunsets?
Oh my gosh. I just made a note, sunsets, for pictures to send you.
Yes, please.
because the sun sets. And, the Nile's big enough. So we saw some boats out there, like other sailboats. And there's another trip that we would love to go back, and you actually just sail down the Nile. And it's like 10 days and you've got all your food. So you're really in a sailboat. And we only did, a short part of the Nile. We didn't do all the way down or anything. But you see these gorgeous sailboats just sailing away in the sunset. If it's on your bucket list, I highly
It
recommend
is.
you moving it up. Like
It's
at
my
all
number
costs.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing.
All right. So I could ask a million more questions, but I'm going to narrow it down. My last question. Did you see any like current excavating going on? Like, are they still trying to find stuff?
They were doing a lot of restoration, but I don't know how much excavation they were doing because they were still kind of like cleaning the sandstone and rebuilding things. And so I don't know that they were doing as much excavation as restoration.
Because I hear they constantly still look, but it's certain times of the year. So I just didn't know if you'd actually seen any while you were there.
Yeah, we didn't. We were there in March, so I didn't see anything like that, sadly.
You just saw a lot of restoration.
Yes.
That's so cool.
I have a really neat picture I'll send you of a guy, and he's like rebuilding a wall, like in the middle of this temple.
I'm beyond jealous. I don't know about Jamie, but
Jenny, we have to plan a trip like tomorrow.
All right, we're gonna go in December. No, I'm just kidding. I don't even think they're taking anyone right now.
Actually, Egypt is on the list of where you can go.
Well, so I'm gonna book my flight when we get out of here.
We're gonna start this. So any tips? Do you have any tips or tricks for somebody like first timers like us that would potentially be making our way to Egypt?
The thing that I would say is it was so worth it to have a tour guide. And a lot of that's probably one of the only places I've really done a tour guide. But one reason is definitely because of the driving there. The highways, it was so funny. We had the most amazing driver. I have no idea how he lived through it because he was so great. But he told us, he's like, oh, the lane, the painted lanes, that's just recommendations. That's not a guideline. And you would see like people on motorcycle, like 4 deep on a motorcycle, not a sidecar, not anything. So it's a country you want to have a tour guide because, and I can't say enough about Ramesside that we used. When we got to the pyramids, our guide had an arrangement that we actually got into the Great Pyramid 20 minutes before it opened. So we were the only people in the Grand Tomb for like 10, 15 minutes. When we went to the Egyptian history, I think it's Antique Museum or whatever it's officially called, it was us and another group, and we got in an hour before anybody else. So we were halfway through the museum. And I'll tell you, because it was our first day, we didn't actually realize that there was nobody in the museum with us. Like we just thought we were at the front of the line. And so when we were almost done, he's like, well, there's one other, you can see the mummy room, or, are you ready to go? And I turned around, and the amount of people that had filled the space without me even noticing it, I'm like, holy cow. So having a really good tour guide, because they took such amazing care of us, they knew all the places to go. One of the things, like I found them on TripAdvisor. So I looked at the top 3 Egyptian companies. I emailed them all. And I'll tell you, Ramesside was not my first choice. The other 2 were willing to kind of barter with me and work on a better price. And I asked Ramesside if they would lower the price. And their response to me was, no, we use all of our own employees. We have everything set in place for you. And you're probably talking to a company who's going to use a taxi driver or this or that. And if you're looking for a bargain, then go with them. But if you want quality, go with us. And I was like, yes, I honor the fact that they told me no. Because everybody looks for a bargain. And then I was a little embarrassed because I'm like, I wouldn't bargain my prices with a client. That's my livelihood. And I did not regret it at all. They were amazing. And you were supporting them too, so. Yes.
It's almost like a tattoo. It's almost like a good tattoo. Like if you want quality work, or like an artist, like a really good artist, like if you want quality work, you're going to pay for something quality. So I definitely would much rather splurge, but spend a little bit more, or not even splurge, just go with, the
The
more
original
reputable
price.
company. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Because it's definitely going to be worth it in the long run. You're right.
Yes. I love that
Yeah.
you tied that into a tattoo.
Because it's like if you want something quality,
Yeah.
I guess because I have tattoos, so.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
have 3. That's why I was like, and I have a
Okay.
new one I want. And so I was like, oh,
I
I
have
love
like
that.
10
I
I
can't
want,
see you, but I love
yeah.
that.
Right.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, that's true. Because the artist that's like, yeah, sure, I'll lower it $100, probably isn't going to do the job that the one that's like, no, you're lucky you're getting it for this price. Like, that's it. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, I have one from I did in Sweden and one I did in Martinique and then one I did here. So I love getting tattoos other places.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool.
I haven't done that yet, but I want to. We were going to on my last trip to Europe, but once we got going, it was so busy that I got home and was like, oh, that tattoo
Forgot
idea.
to do that.
Yeah.
We were in Martinique, which is French Caribbean. Yeah, French Caribbean for Christmas 2 years ago. And so we were there. I think we came home like the 27th or 28th, and he turned 18 on the 9th of January. And we had a tattoo that we've made jokes about we were going to get forever. And so we actually got them in Martinique because they would let me sign for him because he was like 10 days shy of 18. And since I was his mom, so that was his first tattoo was in Martinique.
That is so cute.
Yeah, that's super cool.
It was a fun story.
Aw.
You should send us those pictures too.
Okay.
But yeah, so this was so much fun talking about Egypt. Obviously, I want to go there, and I think Jamie does too. So
I definitely want to make my way to Egypt for sure. That was actually on my bucket list too, Jenny, if you don't remember. So
yeah,
I don't think it was just my number one like it was yours.
That's definitely nice. I'm just like, ever since I was a little kid, Egypt history was the one part I actually listened in class. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
I got excited about it. I still to this day will turn on documentaries. There's no new ones though. I've noticed like
You've
a lot
watched
of
them all.
right. All the good Egyptian documentaries are from like the 80s, I feel. So what would you say is your next bucket list destination?
So we really want to do Italy, Rome, all that area. But depending on it being tourist season or not, obviously don't want to go when it's super tourist season. There's also so I would say I have 2. So Rome, Italy, because I want to do a food and wine tour and I want to see all the artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
But then in Sweden, there is a canal that basically goes from Göteborg to Stockholm, and it's got like 120 locks in it or something like that. And I think that one would be a lot of fun to do because you rent like a small boat and you just go through all the locks and all the countryside. So I have a hard time picking a favorite trip or a favorite bucket spot.
Yeah.
That one sounds awesome.
That's the same I am though, because I'm like, well, I want to go everywhere. So I'll be like, yeah, there. But then I'm like, but also here and there too. And maybe that place also.
We used to actually keep a list in the back of our travel journal of all the places we wanted to go. And I just stopped adding to it because for me, it's always, where did I find a cheap ticket and how can I get from that place to this place? Like when we bought our last tickets, we bought in February, we bought one-way tickets to Portugal and Oslo and had no idea where we were going or how we were getting home or how long we were going to be gone. So I just kind of like find cheap tickets and connect the dots. It's like a little, 1, 2, 3 dot thing that we did when we were little.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of cool too. It's a puzzle. And normally that's kind of how you have the best time is like the unexpected.
Yes. It's been fun that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. And that's one of the things, like I couldn't travel the way I do if I didn't do it budget friendly and really keep it cheap and on the DL, of prices. And, my husband and I, we pack for 20 days in a backpack and we have 22 pounds. And the last laptop I bought the 13-inch instead of the 15-inch because it was a pound lighter. And when you only have 20 pounds and you've got, 20 days worth of clothes, you make sure. So we don't check bags. We have our backpacks and we carry everything in our backpacks and we hike and
same.
You just make it work. So I definitely am all about how inexpensively and easily can I move.
Yeah. So I'm glad you've said all this because like I've said it on our podcast before, but like I was always wanting to travel, but I always was like, I can't afford it. I'm not even going to look at it. And so when I finally did start looking at it, yeah, if you just look at your dream, like if I were to look at Egypt and look for like I don't know, say the middle of summer next year, it's probably going to be a really expensive plane ticket. But if you start moving around the dates and maybe even trying different airports, that's when you start finding it's not expensive. It's affordable. You can do it on a budget. You might not be able to take a whole suitcase full of stuff with you, but you find a good backpack, throw everything in there, carry on, save money.
One of the things that we do, so 2 tips that I have about that is like I'm in North Carolina, so we don't have, I mean, we've got some decent sized airports, but they don't go to all the places like New York or Miami or something like that would have all the different flights. So I don't look at flights from where I'm in North Carolina. I look at flights from Newark, from Boston, from Miami, because that's where you can find like Norwegian Air, Air Portugal, all the smaller country airlines that are reputable, but they just don't fly into the country. And so we start our tickets from the major airports. And then one of the other things I do is I put all of my monthly bills and expenses on my credit card. And for me, it's because we're a creative agency, so we invoice clients once a month. Like, I'm not encouraging you to run up debt and charge your credit card. I'm just encouraging you to responsibly pay all your bills with your credit card and then pay off your credit card every month. Yeah. And so there's so many deals out there. I mean, all of our flights within the country are always free because I use all my miles, because I get so many miles by paying. I pay everything except for my mortgage on my credit card. And, you know, a lot of the credit card companies like American Express, I think I pay $199 a year and I get a free companion ticket within the US. Yeah. So when you want to fly at Christmas and the tickets are expensive, you whip out your companion ticket.
Yeah. And then you get to use one.
I mean, the 3 of us went to Colorado and it was like $33. And right now, using miles is so inexpensive, because they just want to get you on the plane and they know you're using your credit card and you're building up tons of miles. So they want you to use them. So we put everything on our card and use the miles to fly like from here to Boston or here to New York and then jump on another airline. You just have to be careful with that you give yourself plenty of time, so that, because the tickets aren't connected, like if you miss one of the flights, then they're not going to help you. So we call it our appetizer or our dessert, because we went to Boston and we spent the night in Boston so that we were there the next morning to take our flight. We also got to spend a night in Switzerland because we did it that way and had the most amazing fondue of my life. So it's just kind of, you just have to build extra time in. We spent a night in London because we had to cross plane tickets.
I was going to say, I want to go to Switzerland so bad.
I've actually been looking at flights. Yeah.
It's expensive. Like when I've looked at flights, that's one of the more expensive places to find flights to. But the food is amazing.
And just the mountains and pictures I've seen. I mean, obviously I love mountains. I moved to Colorado for them, but the Switzerland mountains are the Alps, it's a whole nother level.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you want to tell us more about your podcast, go ahead and do a little self boost.
Journey, because through my journey with yoga training, I do Reiki, crystal healing, all that kind of fun energy work. My sister lives in California. I'm in North Carolina. My best friend moved 2 hours away, and I was just really missing that connection that you have with women where you could sit and have conversations. And so I call it Grounding Journey, the deeper conversations you've been seeking. And I just invite women on. We talk about spirituality. We talk about life. We talk about where they are, what they're experiencing, just kind of really building that connection that we're missing so much. Not even talking about COVID, but we were missing it before, because everybody we knew, we met on the soccer field with our kids. We met at work. You weren't able to really go deep and authentic and real. And that's one of the things that we do. And then I release bonus episodes on the 1st and 3rd. And that's where we just talk about our favorite books and what we've read lately. And that's a lot of fun to just, and those are like 5-10 minute little blips where we talk about fun books. So check it out. It's Grounding Journey.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check it out.
You can find me on Instagram at grounding_journey or on Facebook at Grounding Journey. I try to keep the conversation going. I'm not as great about keeping the conversation going, but I'm getting there. So I would love for you to follow me, find me, and talk to me about what you're experiencing on your journey or where you've traveled to, so I can add stuff to my list.
Absolutely.
Well, no, I had a great time, ladies. It was so much fun. I would love to hear about what y'all have traveled and where you've been too.
Yeah. We'll definitely do this again, and I'll just get your contact info more so and keep in touch. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Cris. We had so much fun.
No, thank you. I love getting to talk about travel, and I can't wait to be on again and talk about what you guys have done.
Yeah, we will definitely make that happen because we want to hear all about Sweden, obviously your favorite place, and everywhere else you've been. So
thanks so much for your time, ladies.
Yeah. And just remember, you can check out our Instagram, Jet Set Hers Pod, our Facebook, Jet Set Hers Podcast, and the email is jetsethers@gmail.com.
Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. Thanks again, Cris, for coming on with us. We'll see you guys next time, and bye.
Bye.
Bye.